Marcus Williams had always been the type of person who found creative ways to avoid hard work. At 22, he possessed a natural talent that most people would kill for, but he treated it like an unwanted gift. The early morning alarm buzzed. At 5:30 a.m., the same time it had been buzzing for the past 3 years since he joined the university track team. Marcus reached over, slapped the snooze button, and rolled back into his pillow with practiced ease. Outside his dorm room window, the rest of the track team was already gathering at the university stadium. Coach Peterson stood with his clipboard, checking off names as runners arrived for their daily training session. The morning air was crisp, perfect for distance running, and the track glistened with morning dew. Athletes stretched, jogged in place, and chatted nervously about the upcoming regional championships that were just 2 months away. "Where's Williams?" Coach Peterson asked, scanning the group of 25 runners assembled before him. Several teammates exchanged knowing glances. Everyone knew where Marcus was, still in bed, just like he was for most morning practices. It had become such a regular occurrence that the team had stopped expecting him to show up. Sarah Chen, the team captain and one of the fastest middle-distance runners in the state, shook her head in frustration. "Probably still sleeping, Coach. You know how he is." Her voice carried a mixture of anger and disappointment. Sarah had worked incredibly hard to earn her spot on the team and couldn't understand how someone with Marcus's natural ability could waste it so carelessly. The truth was, Marcus had been gifted with something extraordinary. In high school, without any serious training, he had run a 1,500-meter race in under 4 minutes during his senior year. College scouts had practically fought over him, offering full scholarships and promising him a bright future in athletics. But Marcus had never wanted to be a runner. He had stumbled into it accidentally during a PE class when his teacher noticed his speed during a simple fitness test. Back in his dorm room, Marcus finally dragged himself out of bed around 8 a.m., 3 hours after practice had started. His roommate Jake was getting ready for his morning economics class and gave Marcus a disapproving look. "You missed practice again, didn't you?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Coach Peterson looked pretty angry yesterday when you didn't show up for the time trials." Marcus shrugged, pulling on a wrinkled t-shirt. "I'll catch up, I always do." This was true in a way. Despite missing at least half of the team's training sessions, Marcus could still outrun most of his teammates when he actually bothered to show up. His natural speed and endurance seemed to compensate for his lack of dedication, which only made his teammates more frustrated with him. The regional championships were a big deal for everyone on the team. For seniors like Sarah, it was their last chance to qualify for nationals and potentially catch the attention of professional sponsors. For younger runners, it was an opportunity to prove themselves and secure their spots on the team for future seasons. The university had invested heavily in the track program, building new facilities and hiring top coaches, all in hopes of developing competitive athletes who could bring recognition to the school. Marcus had qualified for the championships almost by accident. During one of the few practice sessions he actually attended, Coach Peterson had timed him in a casual 3,000-meter run. Marcus had been chatting with another runner for the first half of the race, barely paying attention to his pace. Then, for reasons he couldn't quite explain, something clicked in the final 800 meters. He began running faster and faster, his long stride eating up the track with surprising efficiency. When he crossed the finish line, Coach Peterson stared at his stopwatch in disbelief. The time was not just good, it was exceptional. It was fast enough to win most regional competitions and competitive enough to place well at nationals. Coach Peterson had immediately pulled Marcus aside after that practice, his voice urgent and excited. "Do you realize what you just did?" he had asked. "That time could take you to the Olympics if you trained seriously." But Marcus had simply nodded politely and walked away, seemingly unimpressed by his own performance. He treated running the way most people treated breathing, as something that just happened naturally without much thought or effort. This attitude drove Coach Peterson crazy. In 30 years of coaching, he had never encountered an athlete with so much raw talent and so little apparent interest in developing it. The other runners on the team had mixed feelings about Marcus. Some, like Sarah, were openly frustrated with his lack of commitment. They felt it was unfair that someone who didn't care about the sport could be naturally faster than athletes who trained religiously every day. Others were more sympathetic, recognizing that not everyone was passionate about running, even if they were good at it. Tommy Rodriguez, a sophomore distance runner, often defended Marcus to his teammates. "Maybe he's got other things going on," Tommy would say. "Not everyone has to live and breathe track to be on the team." But even Tommy was beginning to lose patience with Marcus's constant absences, especially as the championships approached. The reality was that Marcus had never found anything he felt truly passionate about. He had tried various activities in high school, debate team, drama club, even computer programming, but nothing held his interest for long. Running was just another thing he happened to be good at, like solving math problems or remembering historical dates. The difference was that people expected him to care about running because he was so talented at it. As Marcus made his way to his first class of the day, he passed the track where his teammates were finishing their morning workout. He could see them running intervals, pushing themselves to exhaustion in preparation for the upcoming competition. Part of him felt guilty for not joining them, but a larger part of him simply couldn't understand why they put themselves through such intense training when it clearly caused them so much discomfort. What Marcus didn't realize was that his casual approach to running was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. The regional championships would bring challenges that natural talent alone couldn't overcome, and his teammates' dedication was about to prove more valuable than he had ever considered possible. 3 weeks before the regional championships, everything began to fall apart for the university track team. It started with David Kim, their fastest 1,500-meter runner and the athlete everyone expected to win gold at regionals. David had been training perfectly, hitting every workout target and maintaining the disciplined lifestyle that had made him a consistent winner. Throughout his college career, the injury happened during what should have been a routine practice session. David was running his usual Tuesday tempo workout, 800-meter repeats at race pace with short recovery periods between each interval. He had completed 5 repetitions without any problems, his form looking smooth and efficient as always. On the 6th repeat, something went wrong. As he rounded the final turn, pushing his pace slightly to finish strong, his right hamstring suddenly seized up like a twisted rope. David collapsed on the track, clutching the back of his leg and groaning in pain. Coach Peterson and the team trainer rushed over immediately, but even before they examined him, everyone could see from David's expression that this was serious. The trainer's assessment confirmed their worst fears, a grade 2 hamstring strain that would require at least 6 weeks of recovery time. David's season was over, and with it went the team's best chance of winning the 1,500-meter event at regionals. 2 days later, disaster struck again. Maria Santos, their top female middle-distance runner, came down with a severe case of pneumonia that landed her in the hospital. Maria had been feeling slightly under the weather for a few days but had continued training, thinking it was just a minor cold. By Thursday morning, she could barely breathe and had developed a high fever. The doctor's diagnosis was clear. Her lungs were severely infected, and any physical exertion could be dangerous to her health. Coach Peterson sat in his office that Friday afternoon, staring at the entry forms for the regional championships. In less than 3 weeks, he would need to submit his final roster of athletes who would compete for the university. The 1,500-meter and 3,000-meter events, which had been their strongest categories, now looked almost hopeless. David and Maria had been not just competitors, but leaders who motivated the entire team through their dedication and work ethic. The remaining middle-distance runners were talented but inexperienced. Jake Martinez was a promising freshman, but he had never competed at such a high level and tended to get nervous during important races. Lisa Park was technically sound, but lacked the raw speed needed to compete against the best runners from other universities. Neither of them had ever run times fast enough to realistically challenge for medals at the regional level. That's when Coach Peterson's thoughts reluctantly turned to Marcus Williams. Despite all his frustration with Marcus's attitude and attendance, the coach couldn't ignore what he had witnessed during that casual 3,000-meter run several weeks earlier. The time Marcus had posted was not just competitive, it was potentially championship winning. But trusting the team's hopes to someone who had missed more practices than he'd attended seemed like coaching suicide. Coach Peterson decided to have a serious conversation with Marcus. He found him in the campus library, not studying but playing games on his phone, while sitting at a table surrounded by textbooks he clearly hadn't opened. The coach approached carefully, knowing that Marcus had a tendency to shut down when he felt pressured about running. "Marcus, we need to talk," Coach Peterson said, sitting down across from him. "I know you're aware of what happened to David and Maria. The regional championships are in 3 weeks. And frankly, you're the only person on this team with the ability to compete seriously in the middle distance events." Marcus looked up from his phone with the same expression of mild disinterest he showed toward most things related to track and field. "Coach, you know I'm not really the competitive type. Those races are pretty intense and I've never been good with pressure situations. But you have run that one incredible 3,000-meter time," Coach Peterson continued, "and your 1,500-meter splits during that workout suggest you could be competitive in that event too. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not, but the team really needs you right now." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He genuinely liked his teammates and didn't want to let them down, but the idea of being the center of attention at a major competition made him anxious. Throughout his life, Marcus had preferred to stay in the background, avoiding situations where people would have expectations of him. What if I mess up? What if I can't run like that again? That good time might have been just a lucky day. Coach Peterson leaned forward, his voice becoming more urgent. "Marcus, in 30 years of coaching, I've learned to recognize real talent. What you did that day wasn't luck. It was natural ability that most athletes would train their entire lives to achieve. You have something special, whether you want to acknowledge it or not." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Coach Peterson explaining the situation facing the team and Marcus expressing his doubts about competing. Finally, Marcus agreed to think about it over the weekend, promising to give the coach an answer by Monday morning. That weekend, Marcus found himself thinking about running more than he had in months. He remembered the feeling during that 3,000-meter workout, when something had clicked and his body had seemed to move effortlessly around the track. For those final 800 meters, running had felt less like exercise and more like flying. It was the closest he had ever come to understanding why his teammates were so passionate about the sport. On Sunday afternoon, Marcus decided to go for a run by himself, something he almost never did outside of official practice sessions. He headed to the track, which was empty except for a few recreational joggers. Without any pressure or expectations, Marcus began running at a comfortable pace, letting his mind wander as his feet found their rhythm on the familiar surface. As he ran, Marcus began to think about his teammates' dedication and how disappointed they must be about the injuries to David and Maria. He thought about Sarah Chen, who trained harder than anyone he knew, but had never run times as fast as his casual efforts. He thought about the younger runners who looked up to the seniors, and how crushing it would be for them to have a poor showing at regionals. By the time Marcus finished his run, he had made his decision. When he met with Coach Peterson on Monday morning, his answer surprised both of them. "I'll do it," Marcus said simply. "I'll compete at regionals. But I need you to understand that I'm not going to suddenly become someone who never misses practice or lives and breathes running. I'll show up when it matters, but I'm still going to do this my way." Coach Peterson nodded, relief evident on his face. "That's all I'm asking, Marcus. Just show up when it matters." The news that Marcus Williams would be competing at regionals spread through the track team like wildfire, creating a mixture of hope and skepticism among his teammates. Some saw it as their salvation. Finally, their most talented runner was going to step up when the team needed him most. Others worried that someone who had barely trained seriously all season couldn't possibly handle the pressure and intensity of championship-level competition. Sarah Chen was among the skeptics. During the team meeting where Coach Peterson announced Marcus's decision, she couldn't hide her concern. "No offense to Marcus," she said, "but regional championships aren't like casual practice runs. The other schools will have athletes who've been training specifically for this competition all season long. They'll be in peak condition, mentally prepared, and hungry to win." Marcus sat quietly during the meeting, understanding Sarah's concerns, but also feeling a growing sense of determination that surprised him. For the first time since joining the track team, he actually wanted to prove himself, not to satisfy Coach Peterson or meet anyone else's expectations, but to see if he could rise to a challenge that truly mattered. In the 2.5 weeks leading up to regionals, Marcus surprised everyone by actually showing up to practice. Not every day, and not with the obsessive dedication of his teammates, but consistently enough that Coach Peterson began to believe they might have a real chance. Marcus's approach to training remained uniquely his own. He would run hard when he felt like it and take it easy when his body told him to rest, ignoring the structured workout plans that governed everyone else's preparation. During one particularly intense practice session, Marcus found himself running alongside Tommy Rodriguez during a set of 1,200-meter intervals. Tommy had been training religiously all season, following every detail of Coach Peterson's program, and his fitness was at an all-time high. But as they completed each repetition, Marcus matched Tommy's pace effortlessly while carrying on a casual conversation about their upcoming history exam. "How are you not dying right now?" Tommy asked as they jogged their recovery lap. "I feel like my lungs are going to explode, and you're talking about the Revolutionary War like we're sitting in a coffee shop." Marcus shrugged, genuinely puzzled by the question. "I don't know. It just feels normal, I guess. Maybe I'm not running hard enough?" This casual attitude toward what should have been punishing workouts continued to amaze and frustrate his teammates in equal measure. They had spent months building their endurance through careful periodization and systematic training, while Marcus seemed to possess an endless well of natural fitness that required no maintenance. As the championships approached, Coach Peterson made a strategic decision that shocked everyone, including Marcus himself. Instead of entering him in just one event, as was typical for most runners, the coach decided to register Marcus for both the 1,500-meter and 3,000-meter races. The events were scheduled on consecutive days, which meant Marcus would need to recover quickly between competitions. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked when Coach Peterson informed him of the plan. "I've never raced 2 events at a championship meet. What if I'm too tired for the second race?" Coach Peterson had been thinking about this decision for weeks. With David and Maria out of competition, the team's chances of earning enough points to place well in the overall standings were slim. Their only hope was for Marcus to score big in multiple events. "Your natural recovery seems better than most athletes I've coached," the coach explained. "And frankly, we need every point we can get if we want to have any chance of finishing in the top 3 as a team." The plan was ambitious and risky. Even experienced athletes struggled to compete at their best in multiple events at championship meets. The physical and mental demands of racing at maximum intensity typically required several days of recovery between events. But Marcus's unusual physiology and relaxed approach to competition might actually work in his favor. 1 week before regionals, the team traveled to a nearby university for a final tune-up meet. This would be Marcus's last chance to test his fitness and racing tactics before the championship. Coach Peterson entered him in a 1,500-meter race against relatively weak competition, hoping to build his confidence with an easy victory. The race started conservatively, with a large pack of runners content to stay together through the first 800 meters. Marcus found himself in the middle of the group, feeling comfortable but slightly bored by the slow pace. As they passed the halfway mark, he noticed that several runners were already breathing heavily and showing signs of fatigue, even though the pace felt easy to him. With 600 meters remaining, the race leader began to pick up the pace slightly, and the pack started to string out. Marcus moved up gradually, not because of any tactical plan, but simply because the faster pace felt more natural to him. By the time they reached the final 400 meters, Marcus was running in 3rd place, still feeling like he was barely working. The final 200 meters were where Marcus discovered something about himself that no one, including Coach Peterson, had expected. As the pace increased to a near sprint, Marcus didn't just match the acceleration of the other runners, he surpassed it. His long, efficient stride began eating up ground so quickly that he passed the leaders as if they were standing still. He won the race by nearly 50 meters, posting a time that was not just fast, but fast enough to win most regional championships. After the race, Marcus jogged coolly through his recovery, showing no signs of the exhaustion that typically follows a hard 1,500-meter effort. His teammates stood in amazement as they watched him chat casually with spectators, seeming completely unaffected by what had been an impressive display of speed and endurance. "Did you see his face during that final kick?" Sarah asked Tommy as they watched Marcus from the sidelines. "He looked like he was just out for a casual jog. Most people are completely destroyed after running that hard." Tommy nodded, his perception of Marcus beginning to shift. Maybe he really can handle 2 events at regionals. If he can recover from races like that, he might be even better than we thought. Coach Peterson was ecstatic but tried to remain calm as he approached Marcus after the race. "How did that feel?" he asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. "Pretty good, actually. I think I could have gone faster if I needed to. The other guys seemed to be working a lot harder than I was." That night, as the team returned to campus, Coach Peterson began to believe that they might actually have a chance at regionals. Marcus's performance had exceeded even his most optimistic expectations. And more importantly, Marcus himself seemed to be discovering a competitive drive that had been dormant throughout his college career. But the real test would come in 5 days, when Marcus would face the best middle-distance runners from universities across the region, all of whom had been preparing for this competition as the culminating event of their seasons. The morning of the regional championships dawned gray and cold, with a sharp wind that cut across the stadium like a knife. Marcus woke up naturally around 7 a.m., which surprised him since he had expected to feel nervous or excited about his first major competition. Instead, he felt remarkably calm, almost detached from the significance of what lay ahead. His teammates had been awake since 5:30 a.m., going through their elaborate pre-competition routines that had been refined over years of racing experience. Sarah Chen was already on her third cup of coffee, reviewing her race tactics and visualization exercises. Tommy Rodriguez was nervously checking and rechecking his equipment bag, making sure he had backup spikes, extra safety pins for his race number, and all the other small items that experienced competitors knew could make or break a performance. Marcus, by contrast, grabbed a bagel from the hotel breakfast buffet and ate it while watching the morning news, seemingly oblivious to the fact that in 6 hours, he would be competing against the fastest middle-distance runners in the region. His relaxed attitude was simultaneously reassuring and maddening to his teammates, who had spent weeks psyching themselves up for this moment. The team bus ride to the stadium was unusually quiet. Most of the runners were lost in their own thoughts, listening to music or going through mental rehearsals of their races. Marcus stared out the window, watching the landscape pass by and occasionally commenting on interesting buildings or landmarks they passed. His casual observations broke the tense silence, but also reminded everyone of how differently he approached competition compared to the rest of them. When they arrived at the stadium, the atmosphere was electric with nervous energy. Dozens of university teams were warming up on the track and in the surrounding areas, their colorful uniforms creating a rainbow of school colors across the facility. The stands were filling with coaches, teammates, family members, and track enthusiasts who had traveled from across the region to watch the championship events. Marcus looked around at all the activity with genuine interest rather than intimidation. He had never been to such a large track meet, and he found the organized chaos fascinating rather than overwhelming. While his teammates immediately began their structured warm-up routines, Marcus wandered around the stadium, observing the other athletes and getting a feel for the environment. "Marcus, you need to start warming up," Coach Peterson called to him after 20 minutes. "Your race is in 2 hours and you should begin preparing your body for competition." The warm-up routine that Coach Peterson had designed for Marcus was much simpler than what the other runners followed. Instead of the complex series of drills, strides, and activation exercises that most distance runners used, Marcus would do some light jogging, a few easy accelerations, and some basic stretching. The coach had learned that Marcus responded better to minimal preparation rather than the elaborate routines that worked for more traditional athletes. As Marcus began his warm-up, he noticed the other 3,000-meter competitors preparing nearby. They looked serious and focused with the lean, efficient builds that came from years of dedicated distance training. Several of them were athletes Marcus recognized from results he had seen online, runners who had posted times significantly faster than anything Marcus had ever officially recorded. The favorite for the 3,000-meter race was James Patterson from State University, a senior who had won this event the previous year and held the regional record. Patterson was everything Marcus was not: meticulously prepared, obsessively dedicated, and completely focused on running as his primary identity. He had already run under 8:30 for the 3,000 meters twice this season, times that were nearly 20 seconds faster than Marcus's single good performance. Watching Patterson go through his warm-up routine was like observing a master craftsman at work. Every movement was purposeful and precise, from his dynamic stretching sequence to his perfectly timed acceleration runs. He checked his watch constantly, ensuring that each phase of his preparation followed his established timeline exactly. "That's the guy you'll need to beat," Sarah told Marcus as they watched Patterson complete a series of razor-sharp 100-meter strides. "He's been training for this race specifically for 4 months. His coach has him peaking perfectly for today." Marcus nodded, still feeling strangely calm despite the obvious quality of his competition. "He looks really prepared," Marcus agreed. "But I feel pretty good too. We'll see what happens." This casual attitude toward facing such accomplished competition continued to amaze his teammates. They knew that Marcus possessed exceptional natural ability, but championship racing involves so much more than raw talent. Race tactics, experience handling pressure, knowledge of how to respond to different competitive situations. These were skills that typically took years to develop. With 1 hour remaining before the 3,000-meter race, Coach Peterson pulled Marcus aside for their final strategic conversation. They had discussed race tactics several times over the past week, but the coach wanted to make sure Marcus understood the game plan one more time. "The pace will probably start conservatively," Coach Peterson explained. "Patterson and the other experienced runners will want to keep it controlled through the first mile, then make it a tactical race in the final 1,200 meters. Your best chance is to stay relaxed with the leaders through halfway, then trust your natural speed when the real racing begins." Marcus listened carefully, though privately he wondered if he would remember all these tactical details once the race actually started. His previous racing experience was limited to a few low-key college meets, where he had mostly just followed the other runners and kicked when he felt like it. "What if I feel good earlier in the race?" Marcus asked. "Should I just go with that feeling or stick to the plan no matter what?" This was exactly the kind of question that Coach Peterson had been hoping Marcus would ask. It showed that he was thinking about the race as something more than just a fast training run. "Trust your instincts," the coach replied. "You have better natural pace judgment than most runners I've worked with. If something feels right during the race, go with it." As race time approached, Marcus put on his spikes and pinned his number to his racing singlet. The familiar routine of preparing for competition was beginning to feel more serious and meaningful than it ever had before. For the first time since joining the track team, Marcus felt like he was about to do something that truly mattered. Not just to him, but to his teammates and coaches who had invested so much in his success. The call for the 3,000-meter runners came over the stadium loudspeaker, and Marcus joined the group of 12 athletes making their way to the starting line. The crowd noise seemed to increase as spectators realized that the premier distance race of the day was about to begin. Marcus looked up into the stands and saw his teammates cheering and holding up signs with his name. Standing on the starting line, Marcus felt his heart rate increase for the first time all day. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. He was finally ready to discover what he could accomplish when everything was on the line. The starter raised his pistol, and 12 of the region's best distance runners crouched into their starting positions. Marcus found himself in lane 4, directly next to James Patterson, whose controlled breathing and focused stare reminded everyone watching that this was his race to lose. The stadium fell silent except for the wind whistling through the empty sections of the bleachers. "Runners, set," the starter called out, and Marcus lifted his hips slightly, just as Coach Peterson had taught him during their few technique sessions. The wait seemed endless, though it was probably only 3 seconds before the gun fired and the field surged forward in a tight pack. The early pace was exactly what Coach Peterson had predicted, conservative and controlled. Patterson took the lead immediately but kept the tempo relaxed, covering the first 400 meters in 68 seconds. Marcus found himself in 5th place, running easily behind the leaders and feeling like he was barely working. The pace felt so comfortable that he began to wonder if something was wrong with his watch, or if the other runners were planning to race much faster later. As they passed 800 meters in 2:18, Marcus was still feeling incredibly relaxed while noticing that several runners around him were already showing signs of effort. Their breathing was becoming more labored, and he could sense the tension in their stride patterns that indicated they were working harder than they wanted to be at this stage of the race. "Easy. Marcus, stay patient," Coach Peterson shouted from the infield as the runners passed the 1,000-meter mark. But Marcus was already being patient without trying to be. The pace felt so natural to him that he had to consciously remind himself that this was supposed to be a championship race, not a casual training run. At the halfway point, reached in 4:38, Patterson began to increase the tempo slightly. It wasn't a dramatic surge, just a gradual picking up of the pace that would separate the pretenders from the real contenders. Marcus moved up to fourth place without any conscious effort, simply following his natural instinct to match the increased rhythm of the race. Behind him, Marcus could hear the footsteps of other runners beginning to spread out as the pace increase took its toll. Two competitors had already been dropped from the main pack, unable to handle even this modest acceleration. Marcus glanced back briefly and was surprised to see that the field was already stringing out significantly, even though the pace still felt easy to him. With 1,200 meters remaining, the real race finally began. Patterson made the first serious move, picking up the pace from merely brisk to genuinely fast. The move was smooth and controlled, the product of months of specific training for this moment. 3 runners went with him immediately, 2 seniors from rival universities who had been waiting for exactly this tactical moment. Marcus found himself in 5th place, about 10 meters behind the leaders, as they began the most crucial phase of the race. This was the point where championship races were typically decided, where months of training and tactical preparation would determine who had the fitness and mental toughness to respond to the increasing pace. For the first time since the race began, Marcus had to make a conscious decision about what to do. He could stay where he was and see if the leaders would come back to him, or he could respond to their move and try to stay with the front group. His legs felt strong and his breathing was still controlled, so he decided to bridge the gap to the leaders. The acceleration Marcus used to catch the front group was unlike anything the other runners had seen all season. While they had gradually increased their pace through careful effort and tactical planning, Marcus simply shifted into a higher gear as naturally as a car changing lanes on a highway. Within 200 meters, he had not only caught the leaders but had moved into 2nd place behind Patterson. Patterson glanced over his shoulder and was startled to see Marcus running comfortably beside him. This wasn't part of the race scenario he had prepared for during months of tactical planning. Marcus was supposed to be the unknown quantity who might have one good kick, not someone who could effortlessly match the pace increases that Patterson had trained specifically to deliver at this point in the race. With 800 meters remaining, Patterson made his signature move, the surge that had won him countless races over his college career. He increased the pace to sub-65-second 400-meter splits, a crushing tempo that had broken many competitors over the years. The 2 other runners in the front group responded as best they could. But within 300 meters, it was clear they were beginning to struggle with the increased pace. Marcus, however, looked like he was just getting started. The faster pace seemed to unlock something in his natural running ability that even he hadn't known existed. Instead of struggling to match Patterson's surge, Marcus began to pull alongside the race leader, running with the relaxed efficiency that had amazed his teammates during training. The crowd began to take notice of the unknown runner in the plain university singlet who was matching strides with the defending champion. Most spectators had never heard of Marcus Williams, but they could recognize exceptional running when they saw it. The noise level in the stadium began to increase as people realized they were witnessing something special. With 600 meters to go, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of waiting for the final sprint that Coach Peterson had planned, he decided to test his fitness by gradually increasing the pace. It wasn't a dramatic surge like Patterson's tactical move, but rather a smooth acceleration that felt natural and sustainable. Patterson tried to respond, but for the first time in his collegiate career, he found himself unable to match another runner's pace change. Marcus's increase in speed was so smooth and efficient that it took Patterson several hundred meters to realize he was actually being dropped. By the time they reached the bell lap with 400 meters remaining, Marcus had opened up a 15-meter lead that was growing with every stride. The final 400 meters became a showcase of pure natural ability versus years of tactical experience and training. Patterson knew he had to make one final move if he wanted to defend his title, and he summoned everything he had learned about championship racing to mount a desperate final kick. But Marcus was already running at a pace that few distance runners ever achieved, and he seemed to have plenty left in reserve. As they entered the final straight with 100 meters remaining, Marcus increased his pace once more, pulling away from Patterson and the rest of the field with an authority that left no doubt about the outcome. Marcus crossed the finish line 3 seconds ahead of Patterson, posting a time of 8:23:47 that shattered both the regional championship record and his university's school record by over 20 seconds. More importantly, it was fast enough to automatically qualify him for the national championships, something that had seemed impossible just a few weeks earlier. As Marcus jogged through his cool-down, he felt a sense of satisfaction that was completely new to him. For the first time in his athletic career, he had truly tested himself against high-level competition and discovered capabilities he never knew he possessed. The celebration after Marcus's victory in the 3,000 meters was unlike anything the university track team had experienced in years. His teammates mobbed him as he finished his cool-down jog, their excitement and disbelief creating a chaotic scene near the finish line. Coach Peterson stood slightly apart from the group, shaking his head in amazement while trying to process what he had just witnessed. "I can't believe you just ran 8:23, Sarah Chen said, her voice filled with a mixture of admiration and incredulity. "That time would have won nationals last year." "Where did that come from?" Marcus shrugged, still feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what he had accomplished. "I honestly don't know. It just felt right today. Like my body wanted to run that fast." His casual response to breaking a championship record by 3 seconds perfectly captured everything his teammates both loved and found frustrating about him. The media interview area buzzed with activity as reporters tried to understand who this unknown runner was and how he had dominated such a high-level field. Marcus had never done a post-race interview before, and his responses were refreshingly honest compared to the rehearsed answers most athletes gave. "This was your first regional championship," one reporter noted. "Did you expect to run such a fast time today?" "Not really," Marcus replied. "I mean, I hoped I'd do okay, but I've never raced against guys this good before. I just tried to stay relaxed and see what would happen." The reporter looked puzzled by such a low-key response to a record-breaking performance. Meanwhile, the 1,500-meter race was scheduled for the next day, and Coach Peterson was torn between celebrating Marcus's incredible achievement and worrying about whether he could repeat such a performance with less than 24 hours of recovery time. Most distance runners needed several days to recover from a hard 3,000-meter race, especially one run at such a fast pace. "How do you feel about tomorrow's race?" Coach Peterson asked Marcus privately after the interviews were finished. "That was a pretty hard effort today, even though you made it look easy." Marcus considered the question while stretching near the team tent. "I feel pretty good, actually. Tired, but not destroyed like I expected to be. Maybe the 1,500 will be different since it's shorter." His uncertainty was understandable. He had never attempted 2 championship races in consecutive days, and there was no way to predict how his body would respond. That evening at the team hotel, Marcus's approach to recovery was as unconventional as everything else about his running. While his teammates followed elaborate post-race protocols involving ice baths, massage, specific nutrition timing, and early bedtime routines, Marcus ate a normal dinner, watched a movie with some of the other athletes, and went to bed at his usual time. "Shouldn't you be doing something special to recover?" Tommy Rodriguez asked as Marcus settled in to watch a comedy movie in the hotel lobby. "You've got the biggest race of your life tomorrow." "Like what?" Marcus replied genuinely. "I feel fine. If I start overthinking it, I'll probably just make myself nervous." His relaxed attitude was actually backed by solid physiological reasoning, though he didn't realize it. Stress and anxiety could significantly impair athletic recovery, and Marcus's natural calm might actually help him bounce back faster than more anxious competitors. The next morning brought new challenges that no one had anticipated. Marcus woke up feeling good physically, but the 1,500-meter field was completely different from the 3,000-meter competition. While the longer race had been tactical and patient, the 1,500 attracted pure speed runners who could handle much faster early paces and had devastating finishing kicks. The favorite for the 1,500 meters was Michael Torres from Tech University, a junior who had run 3:42 earlier in the season and specialized in the kind of blazing speed that could destroy distance runners who weren't prepared for it. Torres was everything Marcus wasn't, a pure speed athlete who trained specifically for the violent pace changes and tactical complexity of championship 1,500-meter racing. During his warm-up, Marcus noticed that his legs felt slightly heavy from the previous day's effort. It wasn't painful or concerning, But there was definitely a different quality to his movement compared to his normal, easy running. Coach Peterson noticed it too, and began to worry that they had made a mistake in entering Marcus in both events. "If you're not feeling 100%, we can scratch from this race," Coach Peterson offered. "You've already exceeded every expectation we had. There's no shame in focusing on the 3,000 at Nationals." But Marcus had made up his mind to race. Yesterday's performance had given him a taste of what he was capable of when everything aligned properly, and he wanted to see if he could recreate that feeling in a completely different type of race. "I want to try," he said simply. "Even if I'm not perfect today, I think I can still compete." The pre-race atmosphere for the 1,500 meters was noticeably different from the previous day. The shorter distance attracted more pure sprinters and middle-distance specialists, creating a field that looked more explosive and aggressive than the patient distance runners Marcus had faced in the 3,000. The warm-up area buzzed with runners, doing sharp acceleration runs and technical drills that emphasized speed rather than endurance. As Marcus went through his simple preparation routine, he could see Torres and several other top competitors going through elaborate speed preparation protocols. They looked like coiled springs, ready to unleash the kind of devastating pace that could break runners who weren't mentally and physically prepared for it. "This is going to be a different kind of race," Sarah observed as she watched the field warm up. "These guys are going to go out much faster than yesterday, and the tactical moves will be more sudden and violent. Are you ready for that kind of racing?" Marcus nodded, though privately he wondered the same thing. His success in the 3,000 meters had come from his ability to gradually increase pace and sustain high speeds over a longer distance. The 1,500 would require him to respond to sudden surges and potentially make his own dramatic tactical moves at precisely the right moments. Standing on the starting line for the second time in 2 days, Marcus felt more nervous than he had before the 3,000 meters. The stakes seemed higher now, partly because everyone expected him to perform after yesterday's breakthrough, and partly because he knew this race would test different aspects of his running ability. The starter's command seemed to come faster this time, and before Marcus could fully settle into his racing mindset, the gun fired and 12 runners exploded from the line in a much more aggressive start than he had experienced the day before. The 1,500-meter race started with explosive intensity that immediately separated it from the patient. Tactical 3,000 meters Marcus had won the day before. The first 400 meters passed in 58 seconds, a pace that would have been considered suicidal in the longer race but was merely aggressive for the shorter distance. Marcus found himself in 7th place, already working harder than he had expected to just to stay with the main pack. Michael Torres had positioned himself perfectly in 3rd place, running with the controlled aggression of someone who knew exactly when and how he planned to make his winning move. Unlike Marcus, who was still learning to race tactically, Torres had spent years perfecting his ability to read races and respond to every situation that could develop over 4 laps. As they passed 800 meters in 1:58, Marcus began to feel the accumulated fatigue from his record-breaking performance the previous day. His legs, which had felt merely heavy during warm-up, now felt like they were filled with concrete. Every stride required more conscious effort than usual, and he found himself struggling to maintain contact with runners he should have been able to match easily. "Stay patient, Marcus," Coach Peterson shouted from the infield. But patience was becoming increasingly difficult as the pace continued to increase. By 1,000 meters reached in 2:28, Marcus had dropped to 9th place and was in danger of losing contact with the lead pack entirely. The real race began with 600 meters remaining when Torres made his signature move. Unlike the gradual pace increases that Marcus had used so effectively the day before, Torres's surge was sudden and violent, a shift from 66-second 400-meter pace to sub-60-second pace that immediately dropped 4 runners from contention. It was exactly the kind of move that pure distance runners struggled to handle, and Marcus felt the gap opening before he could react. For a moment, it seemed like Marcus's incredible weekend would end in disappointment. The leaders were pulling away, his legs felt heavy, and he was running in a pack of runners who were clearly not going to challenge for the victory. This was the kind of situation that typically broke inexperienced racers the moment when lack of tactical knowledge and championship experience became determining factors. But something remarkable happened as Marcus watched the leaders disappear around the final turn. Instead of accepting defeat or trying to salvage a decent placing, he felt a surge of competitiveness that he had never experienced before. Yesterday's victory had shown him what he was capable of when everything went right, and he wasn't ready to give up on discovering what he could achieve when things went wrong. With 400 meters remaining, Marcus made a decision that defied both logic and conventional racing tactics. Instead of trying to gradually close the gap to the leaders, he launched into a full sprint that was more appropriate for the final 100 meters of a race. It was a desperate, all-or-nothing move that should have backfired spectacularly. The acceleration was so sudden and powerful that it caught everyone by surprise, including Marcus himself. Within 200 meters, he had passed 3 runners and was closing rapidly on the front group, which had begun to string out as Torres's early move took its toll on some of the other competitors. The crowd began to buzz with excitement as they realized the 3,000-meter champion was making an impossible comeback. Torres, who had been confident that his tactical move had secured victory, glanced over his shoulder with 200 meters remaining, and was shocked to see Marcus bearing down on the lead group with frightening speed. This wasn't supposed to happen. Distance runners weren't supposed to have the pure speed necessary to overcome such a large deficit in the final stages of a 1,500-meter race. The final 150 meters became a showcase of raw athletic ability versus tactical perfection. Torres had positioned himself perfectly, conserved energy efficiently, and made his move at exactly the right moment. But Marcus was running with the kind of desperate speed that transcended normal physiological limitations, powered by a competitiveness that even he hadn't known he possessed. As they entered the home straight with 100 meters remaining, Marcus had caught everyone except Torres, who still maintained a slight lead. The crowd was on its feet, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. A runner who had broken a championship record the day before was now attempting an even more improbable victory through sheer force of will. The final 50 meters were covered in a blur of maximum effort from both runners. Torres, drawing on years of speed training and tactical experience, maintained his smooth, efficient form even while running at nearly his absolute limit. Marcus, running on pure instinct and determination, began to pull even with the defending regional champion. They crossed the finish line in what appeared to be a dead heat, both runners collapsing immediately after the line as the enormous effort finally caught up with them. The electronic timer showed an incredibly close finish. Torres in 3:44.23, Marcus in 3:44.31. 0.08 of a second had separated victory from defeat, a margin so small that it was essentially a tie. Marcus lay on the track for several minutes, more exhausted than he had ever been in his life. The combination of 2 championship races in consecutive days, plus the final 400-meter sprint that had defied every principle of distance running, had pushed his body to its absolute limits. But as he gradually recovered, he felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with winning or losing. Coach Peterson knelt beside him, his expression a mixture of pride and amazement. "That was the gutsiest race I've ever seen," he said quietly. "You just ran a 3:44 1,500 meters less than 24 hours after breaking the 3,000-meter record. That's not humanly possible, but you just did it." As Marcus finally stood up and began walking through his recovery, he looked around the stadium with completely different eyes than he had possessed just 2 days earlier. The crowd, his teammates, even the other competitors. Everything looked different now that he understood what it meant to truly compete, to push himself beyond what seemed possible, and to discover capabilities he never knew he had. Sarah Chen was waiting for him at the team tent, tears in her eyes. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I thought you didn't care about running, that you were wasting your talent. But what you just did, that took more heart than any of us have ever shown." Marcus smiled, still breathing heavily from his effort. "I didn't know I cared either until it mattered. I guess sometimes you don't know what you're capable of until someone gives you the chance to find out." Later that evening, as the team prepared to return home, Marcus found himself looking forward to the national championships in a way that would have been unimaginable just a week earlier. He had discovered something about himself over these 2 days that went far beyond running fast times or winning races. He had learned what it felt like to care deeply about something, to push beyond his comfort zone, and to discover that his potential was far greater than anyone, including himself, had ever imagined. The transformation was complete. The athlete who had slept through every drill had become the one his team would depend on when everything was on the line.